Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. He's been making the rounds recently and he seems to be having a lot of fun running for president.
The clock's run out, time's up, over, plow, snap back to reality. Up there goes gravity, up there goes gravity. So never.
Rapping along to Eminem, getting down there with the people, trying to show himself as relatable. And he was in Iowa recently being interviewed by Governor Reynolds at the Iowa State Fair. And he has risen in the polls. He's like the Republican rising star. He doesn't attack anybody else. He just talks about what he wants to do for the country. And that's resonating with people. However, there are the other side who think that perhaps he's just telling people what they want to hear. And when it comes down to it, is he really going to do what he says? There are people who aren't convinced. Now, Vivek has risen in the polls, and according to some polls, he's gaining traction and even closing in a little bit on dissenters. Both of them obviously are quite far behind Trump. And many people are impressed with the way he's handled the woke mainstream media. He's put a few journalists in their place. He's called them out for being biased. He's called them out for putting words in his mouth and trying to create a narrative. He's made it clear that he's not going to be a part of that. And that's impressed a lot of people. Now, he recently had an exchange with someone who identifies as a pansexual person. This is a woman who approached him and asked him about his views on LGBTQ rights. And that, can turn into quite a controversial issue, especially when you're talking to a Republican candidate or, somebody who's conservative. All it takes is one thing and things kick off. But this conversation stunned a lot of people. It really did. And it went in a way that people were not expecting. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, apparently Wayne Brady has come out as pansexual recently. All I know is that he's a very talented artist, an all-round artist. He sings, he dances, he's an actor, he's a comedian. I just know him for, his dancing, his skits. And there was a couple of shows that I've seen him in. So I had no idea. I thought he was married to a woman. But yeah, it turns out he's pansexual and he felt the need to announce this to the world. And apparently, it means that there's no limits to who you're attracted to. You're not in a gay or straight category. And again, a lot of people are like, who cares? Why do you need to announce that? What is that even? No one needs all the details. That's how I see it. But so this woman, in the same way, she identifies as a pansexual. I guess they're going to have to add a P to the whole LGBTQ, whatever. They're going to have to add a P. So yeah, let's take a look.
I was just wondering, what were your opinions on the LGBTQ plus?
Well, I don't think it's one community.
Really?
Yeah, how could it be? Just mashed together an alphabet soup. Trans is fundamentally in tension with gay, if you ask me. But what's your opinion?
I'm personally pansexual, so I was just wondering what your views on same-sex couples were.
I don't have a negative view of same-sex couples, but I do have a negative view of a tyranny of the minority. So I think that in the name of protecting against a tyranny of the majority, and there are times in this country's history where we have had a tyranny of the majority, we have now, in the name of protecting against tyranny of the majority, created a new tyranny of the minority. And I think that that's wrong. I don't think that somebody who's religious should be forced to officiate a wedding that they disagree with. I don't think somebody who is a woman who's worked really hard for her achievements should be forced to compete against a biological man in a swim competition. I don't think that somebody who's a woman that respects her bodily autonomy and dignity should be forced to change clothes in a locker room with a man. That's not freedom, that's oppression. And so I believe that we live in a country where free adults should be free to dress how they want, behave how they want, and that's fine. But you don't become oppressive by foisting that on others. And that especially includes kids, because kids aren't the same as adults. And so I think adults are free to make whatever choices they want, but do not foist that ideology onto children before children are in a position as adults to make decisions for themselves. And so I think a lot of the frustration in the country, and if I'm being really honest, that I also share, comes from that new culture of oppression where saying those things can actually get somebody punished. And in my case, it's part of why it's my responsibility to say them. And I respect that you may have a different opinion, and that's okay. It's part of what makes our country great is that you and I can be civil and have this conversation, and that we live in a country that still gives us each of us the right to speak to a presidential candidate and back and still say that we pledge allegiance to the same nation. So I think that's the beauty of our country, and that's my honest opinion.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your civility as well. I appreciate it.
That blew me away when I saw that. First of all, respect to the woman for her listening skills. She has better listening skills than I do. She stood there, and I don't think she agrees with a lot of what he said, perhaps, but she didn't interrupt him. She let him speak. And likewise, initially, he asked her opinion. And I believe, she would have, if they were going to have a, long conversation, she would have had the time to respond and, give her thoughts. And that's how you should have a conversation. Let people speak. And that's what Vivek has become known for. He's become known for allowing people to speak, even if they disagree with his point of view, even if they're on the other side, so to speak. There was that exchange he had with, a pro-choice woman. And it turned out he let her speak. And that was a way of showing compassion for what she has been through. Even if you don't agree with her stance, she's still been through something, that has been hurtful, that has been very difficult for her. So allowing her to speak is showing compassion. And that's how it came across. But I found she actually kind of proved that she values life because she chose to keep her daughter despite circumstances that weren't great for her. And she revealed that. So in a way, it's almost like when you let people speak, you can find common ground to a degree. And I think that's a great example of how we should approach these difficult conversations. That is a great example of how we should listen to one another when we're talking about issues that are very emotive, issues that really stir people up, that really get people going. And I'm learning, not to interrupt people. I think that's really powerful when you allow people to speak, when you don't interrupt them. You actually get more out of the conversation and you see where they're coming from. Sometimes we make assumptions mid-conversation, and that can get people going down the wrong path and just going back and forth in an argument, and it doesn't get anywhere. But there was so much civility. There was so much respect shown both ways, even if they disagreed. And I have to give that woman her props because she really did demonstrate maturity, even though he may have said a few things that she didn't agree with.
And I think that that's wrong. I don't think that somebody who's religious should be forced to officiate a wedding that they disagree with. I don't think somebody who is a woman who's worked really hard for her achievements should be forced to compete against a biological man in a swim competition. I don't think that somebody who's a woman that respects her bodily autonomy and dignity should be forced to change clothes in a locker room with a man. That's not freedom, that's oppression.
I think that's a step in the right direction. I think that's how things are going to, get done in this country, when we can sit down and have a conversation. And when we can still disagree, you don't have to compromise your beliefs, you can still disagree, but there isn't insults thrown back and forth. There isn't labeling, demonizing people, putting words in people's mouths. It's very refreshing to see a conversation that doesn't involve that. And obviously, the supremacy of the minority is something that a lot of people are concerned with at the moment, especially when it comes to gender ideology, being pushed in schools, being pushed in colleges. She's putting the people in her community in a positive light by conducting herself in the way she conducted herself. She conducted herself in a good manner. Whereas we've seen the blue-haired mafia conduct themselves in a very appalling way, where they don't even let people speak, where they deliberately interrupt you so you can't even get your thoughts together.
But we're trying to center the conversation on the front or the back of the board.
And I agree. You
guys
guys
are
are
doing
doing
you
a good
agree
thing.
with this?
Yes.
And why do you agree with it?
Yeah.
It's life. It's biology. It's that you're a boy, you're a girl. It's that simple. And kids do not. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Keep going. Talk right to it.
So, as a kid, you cannot say that you want to have sex. You cannot say that you want to do marijuana. You cannot have alcohol until you're 21. Buy a gun
Get a
until you're
tattoo.
21. Exactly. You can't do a lot of things until you're at the proper age and until your brain is functioning properly, or at a higher level, or however you say that. So, because of this, that means that kids cannot consent to this either. It's that simple. You can believe whatever you want. It doesn't change who you are biologically.
Where they're singing, yelling, getting in your face, and even being violent. We've seen examples of that. So if we see exchanges like this from both sides, it will put your cause, whatever you're trying to convey, in a positive light. It will put your point across in a positive way. And you're representing the people you say you're a community of. You're representing them when you approach people like this. So you're going to give a good representation, or you're going to give a bad representation. And what I've seen recently is people don't care about representing their cause in a good way. They just want to stop people from talking. They want to stop people from being able to express themselves, being able to say what they think. And labels are put there to silence people. And I'm glad to see there were no labels thrown back and forth in this conversation. When he's talking about the supremacy of the minority, some people might take offense to that. Some people might say, well, are you talking about race too? But even Martin Luther King said that black supremacy is just as bad as white supremacy. And Vivek said there, the supremacy of the majority is also a bad thing. There shouldn't be a supremacy of one particular group. Everyone should get a fair chance. If they work hard, everybody should see the rewards of that, regardless of their background. Everyone should get equal consideration, and the same rules that apply to one group should apply to another. When it comes to free speech, that shouldn't be dependent on skin color. When it comes to sports, we should stick to the categories that make sports fair, that make sports safe. That way, everybody gets a fair shot. And that's how it should be. And that's true equality. So there are some people who are impressed with Vivek. And there are people who don't want to be part of the circus that's going on with, Trump and dissenters and that kind of thing. So they're leaning towards Vivek because he sounds like the voice of reason. However, there are those who don't trust him. There are people who believe he's telling people what they want to hear. He's a true politician rather than the inexperienced, unsuspecting presidential candidate that he appears to be at times. There are people who believe that in order to get people to vote for him, in order to get in favor with people, he's telling them what they want to hear. Whether he will actually do it when it comes down to it is another story. And that's how it is with all politicians, let's be real. There are people who've been looking into his background and they're wondering, do you really believe what you say? Because when we look at your background, some things are contradictory. There's some things that don't seem to fall in line with conservative values. There are some things that don't seem to fall in line with less government control. At one point, he was all for mask mandates. He alluded to, being for that. There's people seeing that he has connections with the World Economic Forum, George Soros, and, they have questions.
We're surging in the polls. The knives are coming out. The opposition research machines are churning. And you know what? That's a good thing. Because I'm running to be your next president. I want to lead this country. And I better darn well be able to take some questions along the way. Stay skeptical. I would be too. Let me just address them transparently. Most popular questions we've gotten, in order. First, what is my relationship with the World Economic Forum? Answer, none, other than being probably their biggest critic here in the United States. And then the reason people are asking me this, though, is because the World Economic Forum named me on a list of so-called young global leaders. They did it despite the fact that I turned down their award. They kept my name on that list despite the fact that I repeatedly asked them to take it off because I did not share their values. I'm an opponent of it. Well, when they refused to do it, you know what I did? I sued them because I believe in taking action. That's the World Economic Forum question. Next popular question we get is, what is my connection with George Soros? Answer, none, zero, indirect, direct, zero connection with George Soros. Why are people asking this question? It's because back in 2010, by the way, long before George Soros had completely fallen off the deep end and gone into these progressive causes, funding these disastrous, toxic prosecutors who are soft on crime, who I've also railed against. Long before then, in 2010, I won a scholarship when I was 24, 25 years old, headed to law school, that was partly funded by, not George Soros, but Paul Soros, who's a relative, a brother of George Soros, who made his money independently, who, by the way, is now dead. that funded hundreds of people. Hundreds of kids won that scholarship. I was one of them to go to graduate school at the age of 24, 25, back when I didn't have a lot of money to do it. And you know what? If I had turned down that scholarship back then, that would have been so foolish that anybody that foolish probably should have no place anywhere near the White House doing trade deals on behalf of this country. Next question I actually got last few days was about a statement that I had made about masks back in early 2020, in the early stages of the pandemic. And here I'll admit it, my anti-government instincts got the better of me. Because I don't know if you all remember this, but back in March, April 2020, when I put that tweet out, which said that we should buy masks based on individual personal responsibility or whatever it was that I said, that was in response to the government, including Fauci and the head of the CDC, laughing at people for buying masks and telling people across this country that they shouldn't buy masks. I have inherently libertarian instincts. I'm skeptical of the government. I think the government mostly lies. And so when they were saying don't buy masks, I went the other way and said that, you know what, if the government's going to tell me not to protect myself, then maybe we should be protecting ourselves. Well, as the facts changed, so did my opinions on it. We quickly learned that masks don't work. The entire time I was against mask mandates and vaccine mandates. In fact, you can take a look at my clip with Tucker in late 2020, when I was one of the early people warning against rolling out the vaccine too quickly and the risks of doing it. But that's where I've been all along. So anyway, keep the questions coming. I think skepticism is good. I think if you want to lead the free world, you better be able to handle the heat. Otherwise, you get out of the kitchen. And you know what? We're going to keep doing this at every step of the way, transparently, openly. That's my job. And your job is to keep asking questions. Keep doing it. Stay skeptical. That's what makes the country work.
Then there was his comments on Juneteenth. People say that's a classic example of telling people what they want to hear. Recently, he came out and said that he thinks Juneteenth is basically pointless and we should do away with it. And maybe we should make Election Day into a holiday instead.
Single day voting on Election Day. We will make Election Day a holiday in the United States of America, so there's no complaints about it. Cancel Juneteenth or one of the other useless ones we made up. Okay? We can't have like everything be a holiday, but we'll cancel one of the other ones and make Election Day a holiday. Paper ballots and government-issued voter ID that matches the voter file. That is what we will do.
Going back to your election security plan, you said you wanted to have a holiday. You said maybe cancel Juneteenth or one of those other useless holidays. Do you think Juneteenth is a useless holiday?
I basically do. Yeah.
Do you think Memorial Day, Veterans Day are useless holidays?
I don't, because I stand with the presumption of time-tested traditions. Like I said, religion is, I call these things cults. I won't dignify them as religious because religions have withstood the test of time. And so I think that if we made a national commemorative holiday for everything that's important that happened in our history, we'd have no working days left. But I think that the spirit of Juneteenth, we already channel into other holidays, like Martin Luther King Day, like President's Day. I think we can commemorate the spirit of that holiday separately. So I think that we shouldn't have redundant holidays that celebrate overlapping purposes. It should have a distinct purpose. And I think, let's be honest, the reason for making that a holiday was under political duress. It was a political hostage situation on the back of the death of George Floyd. And I think that that should not be how we create holidays. We should not create holidays with a cultural gun to our head.
But there's footage of him talking about honouring Juneteenth. So people are saying, he's contradicting himself. If you look back in his past, he has a different opinion about things. Is he really being genuine? As genuine as he comes across in some of these interviews, is that really the real him? Or is he just putting on an act?
We live in a beautiful country. America is blessed with natural beauty in every sense. But the thing that makes our country beautiful actually isn't even the scenery. It's the vision of what this place can be. The place where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you still get ahead in this country based on your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. That's the American dream that I lived. It's the American dream we want to give to the next generation. That's what we celebrate on Juneteenth. We don't just look back and flog ourselves. That's beside the point. What we celebrate is how far we've come. And as a first-generation American myself, you better believe I'm proud of it. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Take it easy and we'll talk soon.
And there are a lot of people who are turned off by his comments regarding Juneteenth. But one thing you have to remember is Trump is originally the one who talked about making Juneteenth a holiday. So if anything, he's going against something that the Republicans were actually going to put in place. The Biden administration decided to take that idea and run with it. So it is a holiday that means a lot to a lot of people, a lot of Black Americans. So is this just him being honest and saying what he honestly thinks? Because it's not a popular opinion, I would think. Or is it him pandering to the white conservatives who are against it? That's how many people are seeing it. So I'll leave that up to you to decide. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.